So, hey guys again, my name is Rita Malala. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I took APHUG last year. Today we're going to be talking about types of agriculture and locations in the world. And don't forget to follow us on Think5able on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And our agenda for today, we're going to be talking about agriculture production and regions. The bid rent curve, it's not a very popular, I guess, concept in APHUG. I wasn't very familiar with it last year. The global system of agriculture, the types of agricultural practices, consequences of agricultural practices, society's effect on agriculture, the Green Revolution, and then the economical and social effect of agriculture. And finally, women's role. Agriculture production regions. Agricultural production regions are defined by the extent at which they reflect subsistence or commercial practices. Example of that is monocropping and monoculture. What is monocropping and monoculture, guys? Can you guys type a very short answer on the chat in the chat? What is monoculture? What is monoculture, guys? Nobody knows? Let's go. Maybe try to understand the prefix or the prefix, the suffix in the word. No, actually the prefix. That's right, the prefix in the word. Marcus, that's right. A single crop. Yeah, that's right. You're right. Single crop being farmed. Mono, the prefix mono, means one. So one, and culture is taking the root word for culture means taking care of. So monoculture is taking care of a single crop. So this basically means that depending on how large of a business it is, or how profitable it is, sometimes we can see that only one kind of stable crop is grown in a field. Do you guys know what stable crops are? You guys should be familiar with that if you've covered the agriculture like section unit. Do you guys know what stable crops are? Stable crops. Stable with a B. Stable crops would be like, it's fine, guys, if you don't know it. It's not a big deal. Stable crops are crops that like crops like wheat, corn, crops that are grown to crops that are like full of carbohydrates, crops that are grown, for example, like to produce like a lot of like flour and products that have a lot of carbohydrates. And a lot of poor countries grow these kind of food, like is potato a stable crop? Potato can be considered a stable crop because it has a lot of carbohydrates in it, so it fills the body with less expensive food. It's a pretty, like, a lot of nations have been created and evolved because of these stable crops. That's how people that's how poor that's the most, guys, I'm so sorry. I can't get words out of my mouth. Stable crops are the diet of the most like lower class people, because it's the most affordable and it's the most efficient way to get in carbohydrates into their system. Intensive and extensive farming practices are determined in part land cost. So extensive and intensive farming practices are determined by the cost of the land, and we can see that in the bid rent theory. The bid rent theory. Are you guys familiar with this theory? I really was not familiar with it last year. Are you guys familiar with it? Do you know the main concept behind it? Let's see. No. It's okay. We can cover it. Okay. So the bid rent curve. Okay, so rent, we know we're gonna be talking about land, right? And the cost of land from just the name of the concept, right? So on here, the horizontal axis represent the distance from the CBD. You guys should know what CBD is. What is CBD? What does CBD stand for? I'll give you a hint. C stands for central. And then figure out what B and D means. What does CBD stand for? Any ideas? It's okay. It's okay if you guys don't know. No, it's not crude birth rate. That's like in the population unit, not in this unit. No answers. Okay, so CBD stands for Central Business District. So the green area, the green semicircle, is the area closest to the central district. So as we said, the horizontal axis represents the distance away from the central business center, and then the y-axis, the vertical line represents the cost of that land. So as we see here, the most expensive land, right? The most expensive land is the one that's green, right? We see, you guys see how the line hits the y line, the y-intercept at its highest point, because it is the most expensive. And the reason why it's most expensive because it is closest. It is closest central to the business area, central business district. That's why it's expensive. So the further you go out from the business district, the less the land will be, the less the cost of the land would be, right? Because the central business district is where the most business is. That's where most people are living. Not most people living. No, not excuse me. Not where most people are living, but that's where most the businesses are. Like in here, that would be like downtown LA, like places that are very crowded and a lot of like activities, a lot of businesses, a lot of business work happens in there. The second the second least expensive is the manufacturing. Yeah, it is the manufacturing. And manufacturing areas are kind of not that close to the district because manufacturing requires a lot of land. So because it requires a lot of land, they're gonna be far from the area where it's expensive, right? Because they require so much land, they're not gonna be closer to the expensive land because it's not affordable. And obviously because there's a lot of like downsides to manufacturing and factories, like pollution wise and environmental, like just like a lot of factors that go into it. And then the third least expensive lands would be land for residents, right? Those lands would be the furthest away from the central business district, because and it should be very away from manufacturing places too, and it is the least expensive. Many people don't who would want to live in the center of, like, in the central business district where it's very crowded and there's a lot of people working, having buildings there. It's not very fun, right? With all the traffic there is, I don't think people like to live there. So the people would generally live away, the furthest away from the central business district, according to this concept. Guys, I know this kind of concept is not very easy to understand? Do you guys have any questions? Did it kind of make sense? Do you guys have any questions? I don't think I did a great job explaining it. But do you guys have any questions? People, okay, so Shelly, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm so sorry. People work in the central business district for the most part. So people have to obviously travel every day, right? To get to the business area. But people don't regularly live where they work, right? They usually have to travel to get to their get to their job. Okay, so no questions. We can move on. Where is okay, sorry guys, just a second. Let me okay. The global system of agriculture. Food and other agricultural products are part of a global supply chain. Do you guys know what a global supply chain is? Any idea what that would be? Global supply chain. Maybe try to connect the words. I mean, the words basically explain what it is. A chain where goods are traded. That is right. So some regions of the world can grow. I think we talked about that last week. Some regions of the world can grow specific products, specific food crops that are makes more sense for them to grow because of their climate, because geographical region, and their supply, the supplies that they have, right? So due to that, like a lot of like we know like a lot of like for example, China or like Southeast North America. No, sorry. China and South America, they're very like a lot of American jobs are being outsourced, right? Outsourced to these regions because labor there is cheaper. So this would be an example of each like part of the world specializing in a specific thing. But in this case, we're talking about food production, not business wise. Some countries have become higher dependent on or more export commodities. So that's right. Some countries depend more on exports than imports. Like it depends obviously on the region of that country, the geographical region. I think it's the size of the country. For example, like Russia is like massive. Like they have a lot of natural resources, but like other countries that are very like small. Like I know there are a lot of like what are they called? You guys have covered this. Countries that are like that don't have any source of water, any kind of water resource. They're like engulfed by another nation, by land. I, you guys, what are they called? Okay, yes, landlocked. That's right, Marcus. They're called landlocked. Yeah. So like landlocked countries, they're like they have to be dependent on exports because then they how are they supposed to get there's no way for them to get food and resources, especially if they're small, because they don't have access to a lot of resources due to the size of their region, right? That makes great sense, right? The main elements of global food distribution networks are affected by political relations, infrastructure, and patterns of trade world. This is very true. Very true. A very recent example of this, I would say, like if you guys, um, our like current issue with China, right? Like the stock market, our stock market like goes up and down depending on the political dispute, if it's actually being resolved or not, right? So it's very interesting to find out how it affects the this global system overall, right? And here this is just a picture to show the like the specialization of different parts of the world different in different materials and different resources. For example, you can see like in the Middle East, they're very rich in oil and sorry, we see in Africa, they have a lot of oil and gold. See China, electronic equipment. In Australia, they have a lot of coal. So due to this region of the world, and as we saw in the Middle East, like these are natural resources. It just depends if you're lucky enough to be in that region of the world and to have access to these natural resources. So there's a lot of factors that play into why countries are rich. I mean, yes, these countries are very rich, but they have a lot of corruption. So the standard of living there is not very it's not very great, like in the US, obviously, right? Even though they're very rich. Okay, so types of agricultural practices. This is like our main concept of the whole session. Okay, so there are a lot of the practices. So we have slash and burn, like it sounds, right? Slash and burn. So they basically cut down this existing vegetation and then they burn them. Do you guys know why they burn them? You guys know why they burn them? Or do they burn existing vegetation? It has to it has to do with the soil, right? It has to do with the soil. They're not just burning them to produce CO2, right? Yeah, unknown. You're right. For the nutrients. Burning them, the ashes, right? The ashes produce some kind of like fertilizers. They become like fertilizers for the soil. So it's very great for the land, right? Uh, this I think happens a lot in Africa, in African regions, like African like farmlands in a lot in Africa. So yeah, but I don't think it's a very efficient way. That's why because in Africa, right, people are they don't really have access to like mechanizations, right? Machines and more like efficient ways of farming. So they would it makes sense. It makes sense for them to use methods that are, I guess, easier to. I mean, it depending on the size of the land. This could require a lot of machines if the land is very massive, and burning it will like manually is not very easy. So it just depends. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and but this is mostly practice. Make sure to know that mostly practice in African countries. Terraces. What are those? So these are like you see, I guess the picture, the green picture on the right. These are basically like forming the cutting down the land into like different steps, like you guys see on and the thing, different steps, and it's these are usually this kind of practice is usually used in rice fields, especially in Indonesia and Vietnam, because obviously the Asian countries and Asians consume a lot of rice culturally, right? Irrigation is not it's part of an agriculture practice, but it's not like a main concept. Agriculture basically obviously means the 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 supply of water to crops, right? And usually that happens now using by using channels. But obviously, depending on the type of irrigation, the type of practices will obviously vary. You're obviously not gonna have a lot of water, a lot of irrigation going into a slash and burn, right? Because I think they have to burn burn the whole land, and then I think like leave it for like a whole year. So obviously you cannot wet that land, right? Or it's gonna ruin the whole process. Deforestation. So deforestation is the clearing of a wide area of trees. A great example of that is the Amazon rainforest in Southeast Asia. Why would they clear out wide areas of trees? Do you guys know? It's it's pretty obvious. Why would they clear out trees? Why are the trees bothering them? Yeah, for farmland, and obviously to use the timber from the trees to make space and to use the timber from the trees. So this is a continuation of the other draining wetlands. Do you guys know what draining wetlands are? Have you guys like heard of them before? Like, are you guys familiar maybe with the concept or like this practice? You guys know draining wetlands? Yes, that's so true, Marcus. Wetlands are going dry, not going dry, going dry. Okay, so it's basically draining water from a wetland region to clear it for farming. So there are a lot of wetlands, right? So the way they would drain them is to like dig like ditches, like that. Yeah, like that picture. They would dig ditches, and that would be where the water would be accumulated to dry the land, and so it won't be too wet to plant in and cultivate. Shifting cultivation, it's a subsistence agriculture practice. It's where people shift from one field to other to fertilize them. Yeah, okay. So it's the idea where like let's say you have 4 fields, right? These 4 fields will be shifted. I don't know. In the beginning, I think it was only like 2 fields, but after that, they started using the 4 field system, rotational system, I think they call it. Yeah. So it's like you have 4 fields, and each season you would grow a different crop in that field to for the health of the soil, to fertilize the soil, because whenever you plant a different crop, each different crop like they release different nutrients into the soil, so it's very healthy for the land, very healthy for the land. And pastoral nomadism, what is that? You guys should know that. Don't tell me you don't know that. What is that? Pastoral nomadism. Yeah, crop rotation is another. I would say it's another term for shift and cultivation. You guys know? Yes, it's like transhuman. That's true, Marcus. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Okay. So so it's basically farming. It's basically like farming, right? And herding animals for food, like for consumption. So here we see a shepherd with his sheeps, right? So they basically take care of sheeps and to for them to produce like milk, eggs, meat, their fur to they use for like clothing. That's the whole idea. And they move a lot. These people move a lot in search of food and food for their sheep, food for their sheep, and then water for themselves, obviously for their sheep too. And then the word pastoral means sheep herding. So whenever you hear the word pastoral, it means sheep herding. Sheep herding. You guys have any questions so far? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? If you guys have any questions, you can put them down in the ask a question like section, so I can go over them because I'm not always reading them. Your chat. Okay, so this is a diagram of shifting cultivation, I think, right? Yeah. So as I said, they're like different processes that each like different processes that each land like each field will go like through at different seasons. So like for here we see primarily for secondary forest, and then they're like burned down to produce some kind of soil, and then a different crop will be harvested, and then it would like for here for example it's left without any kind of it's left fallow. You guys know what fallow is, right? You guys know what fallow is. What is fallow? You guys know what fallow is? What is fallow? Yes. I feel like Marcus, you're like a dictionary. Like, I ask a question and then you give me a whole paragraph of answer. Funny. Okay. So yeah, it's basically leaving the land without any kind of crop being cultivated into. And then another you guys get the idea, right? So the whole idea of strategic cultivation is to maximize the production of the land, but with but by still like obviously keeping the soil healthy for the like long run benefit of the whole process. So you have one question. Let's review the question. And you talk about how agriculture relate to each other. Okay, we're gonna be talking about that in the next slide. So I'm not gonna answer that now. We'll see. We'll go because I'm gonna be talking about that like very very soon. Where's my click? Okay, okay. Consequences of agricultural practices. Yes, agriculture is good, but there are a lot of like problems that it can bring with it, right? So pollution. The main thing with agriculture is pollution of water and lakes, right? Because a lot of chemicals, pesticides, a lot of like fertilizers are used and they go underground and they go through waterways, and obviously they end up in rivers. And if they're used very harmful chemicals used, they can pollute the water, and then we can't really drink clean water, right? So it's a big issue. There's a lot of like I think systems that are like created to like to filter out this water to make sure that no very harmful chemicals going into the water, because it's very dangerous too if people are drinking this kind of water. Desertification. Desertification is actually like the overuse of land. If you overuse land, if you like cut a lot of trees, right, and you overuse the soil, at some point the soil will no longer be fertile enough to grow. You can't really do anything about it. It's just you've used it too much. Like there's no any kind of nutrients in the soil to actually produce to soil. It's just the land is just done. It's just done. And soil salination. What is soil salination, guys? You guys know what soil salination is? Yes. When soil, Marcus, you're like on fire. Yes, you are right. When soil gets salted. So the way this works is when planting, right? When irrigating plants, right? The plants will absorb all the water, right? And then the salt in the from the water is basically gonna stay there, right? It's not the plants are not gonna absorb the salt, right? So over time, the salt accumulates and it produces like very harmful problems because you can't really plant on salty lands. This is an example of that. It literally turns white. And then this is an example of desertification. And usually these two obviously happen from overusing the land and not taking care of it. So society's effect on agriculture. Yes, Kai, I believe, right? Scala. I hope I'm saying that right. Okay, so I'm gonna be answering your question here. So how society affects agriculture, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into this. Where's my click? Sorry, guys. So where is it? Okay. So changing diet. So depending on the diet of the culture of the people, right? The type of crops that will be requested or consumed will be different. Like for example, we were talking about like last stream, I think we were talking about like the Middle East and how like eating pork is a taboo for them, right? Most likely you're not gonna cultivate, you're not gonna take care of, you're not gonna rear animals, you're not gonna rear porks for the purpose of consumption because they don't really consume that. They don't really consume that. So they're not grown for the purpose of consumption. So another example of that would be like, I think there's like a rising movement, I think health movement in the US here, where many people are eating like organic foods and whole foods that are like very beneficial for the body. So eventually, if this movement grows and grows and grows, it becomes bigger and more people are actually attracted to it, less people are gonna be wanting to eat meat, right? They would eat more like natural food, and like they would get their proteins from natural resources rather than meat. So the meat consumption and meat production in the US will go down if that actually happens. Another thing that would affect society, would affect agriculture, is the roles of women in agriculture. If you guys don't know, women basically do most of the agricultural work in less developed countries. Like this is an example. I would say this is in Africa. Obviously, I think it's in Kenya. I'm not 100% sure, but it's an African region. And in Africa, mostly are women are the most like are the ones that actually do most of the agricultural work, not the men. So I think it's a cultural and I guess it's a gender role thing. They're just responsible for doing the agricultural work. Obviously men do it too, but the women are the most ones that are actually like experienced, and actually that's like their responsibility. And obviously, the economic reason is like the huge one, a huge one. Like depending on the society and their status, how much money they have, it would depend, right? It would depend because if they're like, for what kind of what is the economic reason of the picture you guys are seeing right now? Like, what is the purpose behind their type of agriculture? Like, what is their purpose? Do you guys know? Feed village. Yes, that's right. To feed their village and their family. So it's sub, subsistence agriculture. Sorry, guys. As opposed to commercial, if you guys compare the two, they look completely different. So depending on which two are being used, that would affect the type, and the agriculture practices being used too. The Green Revolution is when technology kind of like advanced to its like max, right? In agriculture. So it brought about like high yield seeds. That means you can and instead of like you can plant more, right? Because you have more seeds, you can plant more, and you can plant more efficiently, right? Because you don't have to take like make sure, because the way agriculture works back then, farmers would actually like throw like seeds all around, right? But now you have so much seeds that you don't really, it's not a problem to access these seeds, right? It's not a problem, and it's a very efficient way to actually produce crops. But also, this is a big one. Increasing the chemicals. These chemicals are like revolutionized the whole agricultural world because it made production so efficient and fast. Like fast. Like people actually like most like more than 99% of our food here in the US are cultivated using chemicals because like population is growing. Like if you actually don't have chemicals, how are you gonna feed these so much people? Because these crops actually. Oh wait, sorry guys, I have forgot to. Okay, so sorry guys, I had to do something with the question. Okay, so yeah, so the increase in chemicals revolutionized the whole agriculture world because it made food production so much faster, and people will not be starving because they can't wait for food until like for food to actually be grown, because you can grow it in so much less time. And mechanized farming, obviously we covered that a lot by now. The efficiency that machines will bring, and the obviously it led to a lot of need for farmers and less workers actually working in the like agricultural sector because there's machines that are doing this work. We don't need humans anymore. We have machines. Okay. You guys have any questions by now? Questions? No questions? Okay, we'll move on. Consequences of agriculture practices. Agricultural innovations such as biotechnology. Okay, these are controversial, very controversial topics, right? So there's a lot of like different, like very advanced agricultural innovation, like biotechnology, right? Like they actually genetically modify a tomato, like a genetically modified tomato, so that this tomato can survive for a longer time. It can not go. It cannot. It can actually stay fresh for a longer period of time, which actually generates more money for the farmers and for the businesses, right? Because it's not, they don't have to throw it in a week. They will maybe it will wait for a week and a half. That means they're not gonna have a lot of waste, right? A lot of waste because people actually can buy it. It's not like rotten, right? In that amount of time. So it generates. It's great for the businesses. Maybe it's not very. I don't think there's enough like research about biotechnology, like kind of altering the genetics of the food. I don't know if there's. I have not looked into it, but I don't know if there's some scientific study stating actually that it's not actually beneficial or it's harmful in somehow. So and aquaculture, right? So all these issues are being debated because of sustainability, soil and water usage, reduction of biodiversity, extensive fertilizer, and pesticide use. What is aquaculture, guys? What is aquaculture? What is aquaculture? You guys know what aquaculture is? Fish farming. You are right. No, Marcus, you're not right this time. It's not water culture. I mean, you can argue that, but it's it's basically fishing, right? Fishing animals in the ocean, in the water, right? And aqua means water, and culture is taking care. Well, yeah, taking care of or like cultivating the water, not cultivating. It's basically fishing. It's basically fishing animals. But there's a lot of debate over that, especially in the regions of the world, over sustainability, right? And the reductions in biodiversity. For example, like I think in Japan. No, is it in the Philippines? I think in the Philippines. I think in the Philippines. Like in Asian countries, other Asian countries, most of them actually, especially the Philippines and Indonesia, where they actually are like fragmented and they have a lot of water borders. They actually fish is like one of their main resources, right? Their main resources for their diet. So so because they're fishing so much, at some point these fish are gonna go extinct, right? And that would cause a huge problem in the whole like system, like the whole system, right? Because if they go extinct, the 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 animals that eat them go extinct, and the animals that they eat multiply, right? So it's a huge problem for the environment as a whole and for the whole system, for the whole ecosystem. Patterns of production and consumption are influenced by movements relating to individual food choice, such as community-supported agriculture system, fair trade, local movements. Okay, so a lot of like you see a lot of patterns of agriculture changing because of what people actually want to eat. A lot of because of ethical reasons, like fair trade, for example. It's you guys know what fair trade is? Do you guys know what fair trade is? What is fair trade? Fair trade. Have you guys seen that like label fair trade on one of the products you guys buy? Maybe like define fair. Fair, I would say very equal. I would say equal or like reasonable. Not really. Okay, fair trade basically is a movement where there is a relationship between the producer and the consumer. So this basically means the consumer would pay more for the money for the produce, right? For the money, whatever it is, tomatoes or like I don't know, hand woven sweater or something. They would pay more for the producer to make sure that the producer is actually getting enough wages, because a lot of these producers of these farmers, right? These farmers are paid very low wages, especially in very less developing countries. They're paid very low wages. So free trade is basically making sure that the farmer is getting enough wages and very fair wages in exchange for higher quality of goods for the consumer. So that's the whole idea. Dietary shifts, for example, is like we mentioned before, like the whole um organic food, healthy food movement in the US that's happening. If it actually grows, it can massively alter our consumption of meat, and we would actually um our demand for like actually organic foods and like just natural plant-based products will obviously increase, right? Challenges of feeding world's population. Okay, there's a lot of challenges, right? So lack of food access, food security, and food deserts. So depending again on the region of the world, there are a lot of regions in the world that you can't really cultivate food in. If they're too hot, then some foods might not grow there that would be good for eating, right? And the second one is a huge one: problems of distribution systems. A lot of people are starving. A lot of kids are dying in Africa, not because we don't have enough food, but because of the unfair distribution of resources, right? Not because we don't have food in the world. We have a lot of food in the world because of obviously the high technology, the mechanization, this whole like green revolution that like revolutionized the whole agriculture process and made it so much more efficient, much faster. These people don't have food because of the unfair distribution of these resources, right? And this food. And then land use lost to suburbanization. What is suburbanization, guys? You guys know what suburbanization is? What is suburbanization? Suburbanization. What is suburbanization? Anybody knows? Residential areas growing. You are right, Marcus. So basically, like taking or destroying farmland in order to build residential areas, right? Residential areas. So because of that, there's less food being grown. Economical effects of food production. The location of food processing facilities and markets. Location, like we talked again, right? How far is that farm away from the district, right? That would affect a lot the cost of food being produced, the cost of the land. But again, there should be a proportional relationship, right? Because if it's too far, that means like transporting the goods will be more expensive. Like we talked about the von Thunen model, right? Because there should be like a proportional like relationship between these two, the cost of the land and the cost of transporting the food or whatever. Economies of scale, proportion saving costs gained by increased level of production. Distribution systems, forms of transportation. Like we talked about forms of transportation. If it's more expensive to Like that's like watermelon. Watermelons are very heavy, so if it's very expensive to actually transport them, then they would be maybe grown in closer regions to like decrease that cost, hopefully. And then government policies, tariffs, and political relationships. Political relationships, like we talked about China and the US, like the whole deal, right? This affects a lot, a lot. Like this is like one of the major. And then tariffs, obviously. Do you guys know what tariffs are? What are tariffs? Yes, tariffs are taxes on important goods. So, for example, if a government wants to grow a special industry in their region, maybe because they have the potential to, they would put tariffs on the same imported good to make the domestic goods more less expensive and more affordable than the like foreign goods, right? To grow their industry. And then think this one is the yeah, this is the system by which like food actually gets like to places, right? You have to go into different like steps, right? You have to produce the food, you have to ship the raw, like maybe like I don't know, like corn maybe, and they would have to like food process it and maybe put it in cans, put the cans in put the put corn in cans, right? And then market it, like put some labels on it and then ship it to markets, and then people would buy it and they would actually consume the corn with some mashed potatoes maybe, and then they would hopefully recycle the cans of corn. Roles of women in agriculture. Women played a very crucial role in agriculture, guys, especially in North American, African countries. Most of the time, it is the women who actually like produce the food, distribute the food, right? They rear a lot of animals, take care of like they rear the small livestock too. They grow the crops, right? And then it's very interesting. This is a picture of the Maasai people in. Let me see if I have. Okay, no, I don't have a picture. Okay, so this is an example of this is a picture of the Maasai like tribe in Africa, and it's very interesting. The women are the ones that actually have when they get married, they have to build their home. That home like it's made of like I don't know, maybe mud or something with like I don't know what they mix with it, but it's made of mud and some sort of material to make it strong enough. But they actually have to build their home to actually get married in. It's very interesting cultural values. And then we are done for today, guys. Thank you for showing up, guys.